Today is Thursday, February 29th, 2024, and this is a meeting of the Senior Center Site Selection and Building Committee. We are being recorded tonight, but due to technical difficulties here at Town Hall, the Zoom is not available, so I don't need to read the Zoom paragraph. So I will, like I said, call us to order at 6:01. You have, I think everyone in the committee has the agenda in front of them. Welcome, Carol. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda or a modification?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Okay, second?
Second.
Right, all in favor?
Aye.
The chair says aye, great, wonderful. So the first thing on the agenda is approval of minutes from our last meeting on February 8th, 2024. Has everyone had a chance to review those minutes? And just as a matter of housekeeping, the revisions were made to the last two sets of minutes, and they'll be available for posting shortly. So.
I'm just quickly.
Very thorough.
Okay.
Very thorough. Yeah.
Yes, many thanks to the town manager for drafting these minutes.
God. Even put the paragraph in there about the Zoom.
It made me feel like I was here.
Yeah, right?
You are in spirit.
Yes, I was. Thank you. I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes
Second.
for February 8th.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, chair says aye. All right, and we pass. All right. Number 3 on the agenda is review and approval of the RFP for privately owned land. My apologies, I had sent a draft out to the subgroup that was working on that, but did not have time to follow back through. The main part that we were working on is removing the language that had to do with or a building that could accommodate, to simplify that process, and then removing the part that referenced within the historical boundaries of Ayer within Devon's, because the charge of this committee, as detailed by the select board, was within the current town of Ayer. So what the committee here, and I apologize I didn't have that review. We can table this item until our next meeting, or I guess the group could choose to authorize to issue it, but you'd be doing that without having seen the revisions. So I just.
The subgroup you referred to, that was Dan, right?
It was Dan and with the town manager's oversight for the legal part.
I mean, do you guys feel comfortable with the language the way it is now? And if it is, then I'd say go with it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm comfortable. I have Katie's revisions, and I just had some minor ones after yours, but I know we didn't get to finish it off. But I am, but I don't know if the rest of the group would, if they want to take a look at it before we send it.
And the differences between, just kind of highlight the differences between the previous RFP that was sent out with the previous working group and this one, and like are there substantive changes that would be?
Through the chair, I mean, and you were involved, Dennis, on the previous one. So the main substantive changes is, one, obviously, this is geared towards private, opened up to any private land options within the territory of Ayer. If you'll recall, the last one was both Ayer and Devon's. Per the select board's charge for this committee, as Katie mentioned, the focus is to be within Ayer. So that's perhaps the biggest substantive change.
Yeah.
When I looked at it, I just had a couple of procurement to form, which I don't think affects anything, which Dan and I would handle.
Yeah, I agree. There's a couple of things probably in there that you don't quite need for procurement and still be in compliance with 30B, just to make it simpler for people. But other than that, the biggest substantive change was the removing the Devon's
So if I can ask a quick question, I wasn't involved in the last time, so just to bring myself up to speed, so a quick summary, is this basically just asking any residents or business owners within the town of Ayer to give their addresses that may be available for us to look at? Is that essentially what the request is?
It's a little more than that, though. They have to provide a proposal, and it's the way it works with government when you try to get real estate. There's 30B, there's a process, so you send out the request for proposal. So they'd have to identify the size of the land, prove they have ownership, and also, I think they have to provide a price too, as well as part of it. And then we would review it as a group. You review the non-price proposal. Is this advantageous for their committee? And then you review the price. And that's how it works. So if there was a property owner who was, wanted to do it, they'd have to go through this process.
Great.
And if I may, and the method of distribution is it standard kind of
Yes.
procedure for
So
distributing?
through the chair, just the distribution, so if the committee approves it, Dan and I will get it all, teed up and what have you. We would advertise it as we do everything on all of the town's social media, local things. Last time we sent it to various realtors in the area, but one of the main ones is we posted it on what's called the Central Register, which is a state-wide location where for the distribution of land and facilities, and another thing that's called combis. It's to cast the biggest web, and I think, Dennis, we're open to any other suggestions to get it out there.
I mean, I think that part of the reason for the question was in order to kind of better inform the public that this will be available, and it has been made available on a broad basis to everybody around. So I'm comfortable with the revisions and the distribution.
I feel good, but I think it's better to move ahead instead of losing a month or anything.
Yeah, I think that was part of my concern last month or last time we met, I should say, was that, do we want to put this out? I guess later on tonight, we're going to talk about the parcels that we've got down to that are town land. I was a little bit apprehensive about putting it out and having both floating at the same time, but I think you guys convinced me that it would be better to just go out and get a shot at privately owned land as well, in the event that we needed to move that way. We'd started already. I'm just trying to review.
Right, yeah, no, I think that's
That's
helpful.
what everyone's idea was. Okay, so we're good with that. Thank you.
Yeah, so if I may, I would like to make a motion to approve the RFP for privately owned land that Dan and the town manager have been working on.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Chair says aye, so that motion passes. Wonderful. And then Dan, how long will that, once, I presume, takes a few days or whatever to get it out and revised and out, how long is a typical RFP for this type open?
I'll have to check. I didn't check what the procurement requirements are, if there is a deadline for the proposal. Typically, it'd be 2 weeks. It has to be in a newspaper for a bid. I don't know if it applies for this.
Okay.
But we probably want to have it out there. I think you had in here March 29th in there, so that's a good month. We probably want to have it out on the street for a month.
Okay.
Yeah. But we can get it out there now that we have approval. Just get it out there next week and those,
All right.
the first, as soon as we can, yeah.
Wonderful. Good. All right. Keeps us moving forward. All right. So that brings us to number 4, presentation and discussion of architect response scores. So everyone should have received in their packet, and then there's also copies here, and it's posted on the website as well, a summary of scores. Thank you to almost everybody was able to score the proposals. The 6 proposals we received, and they were scored twice. The first set of scores was just sections 1 through 4, because not everybody offered responses on the reference section, because I, for example, did not reach out for references. I figured that would be one coordinated thing that we did. So it didn't actually change the ranking of the top 3. So should I guess for the sake of public record, I should read all of the scores or not?
So, in terms of the process, obviously you've summarized the scores, but that is the process for are we obligated to follow what the maximum score was, or can, in the process of discussion, preferences change on who should or should not be?
You know, preferences can change, yeah, you don't have to pick the high score.
Okay.
Right, yeah.
And I think some members of the committee in previous meetings had suggested wanting to discuss it and then potentially interview several of them before making the decision.
Three.
Three.
Yeah, I think that,
All right, so did anyone, I included in the packet as well as all of your fellow committee members' individual scoring pages. Did anybody have any comments or discussion they wanted to?
just for, I also didn't rate the references simply because I didn't feel comfortable. I thought it would be presumptuous on my part if I were to ask for references for a firm that might not. So, I mean, that's why I didn't score the references. I didn't feel like I had a basis for doing so.
I gave them all the same number.
That's what I did,
thing.
yeah. And then, yeah, and you know, if we wanted to, we could have maybe one person from the group call. You know, and most of these firms, you can tell from the qualifications that they're qualified to do this, and the references will probably give you a good reference. They're not going to put a reference on there who won't. So if we want to, we could move forward, you know, maybe have someone do that. And report back if there's any issues. But I think moving forward, we kind of see who the top three are now. And it's the top three in both of your scoring lists. Katie, it's Catlin, BHA, and Abacus. Because I did actually look back at what the top three of each person who scored them was, and those were the most of them, which makes sense. Catlin, BHA, and Abacus. Certainly BHA and Catlin had a lot of the ones and twos out of the group, so.
Ones and twos?
The top one and the top two of each person, like
fives or fours.
Like Ken, you had Catlin as number one, and BHA was tied for number one in your score. You had them tied, so.
You sure?
I think so, unless I did my math wrong.
So if I may, just for transparency purpose, I do want to put out there that in other municipal projects in my job, I have worked with both BHA and Abacus. My experience with them, they were not equal personally. BHA we actually started working with and we actually removed from the project because we found that they were a little bit lazy on some of the items that they were due to give us. We found that they weren't necessarily as open to listening to our unique needs, that they kind of had a predetermined method or program idea for what the buildings that we were having designed were done. So for me personally, I still strongly encourage, based on these scores, that we interview them. But I do want to just lend some caution that their presentation is great. Obviously, their presentation, when they provided it to us in my work capacity, was great. We initially hired them. But the results and the substance didn't necessarily match the application and the presentation. So I did just want to throw that out there just based on working experience with them.
And as I was looking through their application, they didn't even talk about citing at all. I mean, this is our number one concern is the citing. And I actually put on here to disqualify BHNA because they don't address site selection. And, that's our first job, unless I'm missing something.
I think I'd have to.
Dave, your comments, I noticed, came in later. Are they in the group you just passed out?
Yes.
At the end?
And I apologize,
I
I
read
think
his
they
notes.
printed
This is it.
the opposite direction on the page. So yes, so your name is cut off on the top, but that is you.
I have visited a couple of sites, and I have had some negative comments about one of the group. I don't want to poison the well or anything, or I'm never sure whether it's good to pass things along or wait, but it is one of the top three. So I think in some cases it depends on I don't know. It depends on the situation, that you get into with them. But I think that's very important that we ask questions, we interview them, and in some way, shape, or form, try to hit on the areas where we have concerns. I mean, I've been told a similar thing about a different one, that they came in with their idea of this is what a senior center should be, and they skewed more towards not the active senior, but, kind of the older person who they feel wants to sit around and, play checkers or something. So then there was conflict between people at a certain level. So I think it's good to set up some questions, and we should ask each interviewee the same questions, and that we can get at how responsive they are to people's ideas and what their needs are, and the citing and stuff like that.
Do we know if the interview process is public, or is that held?
That would be public.
Everything we do is public.
There are 10 exemptions that are allowed for on open meeting law for going into executive session, and this is not one of them.
Okay.
The only one that I think is going to apply to this group has to do with the procurement of private land.
So I had a couple of comments. When I looked over the proposals and looked up those firms, I felt that I think any of those architects could probably do the job. That doesn't mean they're all suited for what we want, but typically my experience with architects is that most can do the job. They've got stamps, they've got qualifications, they have contacts, but I happen to like the idea that, and I think that Catlin was, I'm not sure which one I rated highest, actually, to be honest with you now, but I was interested in the idea that I think it was BH&P actually had a complete list of the other disciplines that we are apt to use. So as a committee, we have to be aware of the fact that we're going to pay more than architectural fees. We have to have tight testing. We have to have wetland scientists. All those different characteristics were carried out. Now, we may just use that information ourselves, not necessarily because...
Weren't some of them including some of those fees within the total 125,000?
But they had, I think, the longest list,
Yeah.
most comprehensive list of consultants, and it used to, of course, the big word here that was important to me was, amongst other things, was the word allowance. So their proposal included, now, we didn't ask them for this takeoff list or list of other consultants as part of this go-around. You pointed that out to us. We weren't really concentrating on that.
We asked for a markup for outside consultants or subs, but then any other assumptions they had with their fee proposal. So I guess they decided to present it like this. Yeah.
But what I'm getting at is, at the minimum, we should, as a committee, make note of that list and keep it as a record, because we're going to need that list. So no matter who we collect, we want to pretend. So in their case, their architectural fee was, and I did put notes on mine about the fees, because I just felt eventually we're going to get to the fees. We want to be comfortable that we have at least not paying in an excess amount. So in this particular case, their fee was basically, architectural was 60,000, and all the rest added up.
Gotcha.
Bringing it up to almost double that. So I think we need to be careful that we do include and look at more than just the architect's fees, because we're going to run up against that stuff.
There was one firm that came up with 167,000.
Right.
With all the other fees and things like
Right.
that.
Right, but I think it's important that if tonight we can just get to 3, I think that would be good, If we all agree we can get to interview 3 of them. I think we all agree on the bottom 2, because that looks like they just didn't fit in, with what
They
I
didn't
felt.
really have any experience in senior centers. They mostly said either they did libraries, which was like a senior center, or
Yeah.
it was, can't remember what the other one did. But.
So, Madam Chair, for me, Bargman, Hendry, and Catlin were the clear first 2. And then, as I thought more about the third one, it came down to Abacus or Magel DeStefano. And I know that we've had experience with Abacus, and on the third choice, I just felt like having a new set of eyes or having a different perspective beyond what we already had experience with Abacus would be helpful. So that's why I had them at third.
Were people not happy with Abacus?
I think my interactions with them, I was happy with the consulting that they provided, given the place that we were. There were times I wish that it was less exploratory or less limitless options and more guidance. But like you were mentioning before, it's hard to know whether that's particular, there's, everyone here is qualified to do it. So whether it's a function of the way you would really interact with them or the phase of the development that you were at that point. So I'm trying to make that as transparent and yet fair as possible.
So if I can just jump in on that, it's interesting you say that. So Abacus is actually the group that's doing 2 of our buildings in Billerica now. And our experience is that they actually have provided guardrails and guidance. So it's just interesting. And it probably was more so at the very, very, very beginning stages here, whereas we're much further along there, where we're actually going to town meeting in the spring to present and do everything. And Abacus has been a partner in that. You know, it's not, we tell them what we're going to do and they just do it. You know, it's been a real partnership. And likewise, you know, to kind of counter how Dennis viewed this, honestly, I had Miguel at the very bottom of my list. In their list of resources, if I'm remembering correctly, they had little to no municipal projects listed. And there's a significant difference in doing, you know, a municipal building than a YMCA, or, you know, what they kind of looked to be specialized in. So I think the lack of municipal experience for me ruled them out. I think that this project will require municipal knowledge that they didn't necessarily represent themselves as having.
It's interesting how, I'm glad to hear your comments, because I didn't really look at it that way at all. I looked at it more as a firm that's capable of doing a job, and I never made the connection between a municipal. I didn't even use it as a criteria in my mind. I was looking at it from my own thoughts of, you know, can I work with an architect? Can they finish the job? Are they going to be available?
Yeah.
To me, that's really the most important thing, because I got to be able to call them up and they have to answer the phone.
Yeah.
And work with us, you know, in the process, throughout the process. So I guess all of us are going to have a different angle that we come into it at, which is fast, which is good for a committee.
I mean, I worked for the state, and we did some projects with people that had no experience working with the state.
Yep.
And they just could not abide by our guidelines. You know, it was supposed to be, you do a design, we review it, then we approve, and they just moved on straight past that because they wanted to.
That's why we're all here.
And it was kind of, you know, I agree that I think there is a component of working with a municipal building that's different.
Yep.
And in addition to that, they also are going to have to be a partner that sells the project and presents the project
At the
and
town
takes
meeting,
community,
yeah. Right,
you know,
that's critical.
input
Yeah.
and things that if you don't have that municipal experience, that we could struggle with that.
Yeah, I think what you mentioned Abacus, and I think you asked the question, did anyone have a problem with Abacus? And I think the experience that I had in meeting with them was, I didn't feel like we got much done from meeting to meeting. It kept like we were just dragging, and there didn't seem to be a goal. We're going to get this done by this meeting, and we're going to get this done by the next meeting. It seemed to be that we just weren't getting to conclusions. And I also felt that there was something that, and this could be wrong, because it depends on how the interaction goes. Maybe we didn't ask them the right questions. You know, maybe we just didn't get out there far enough. But one thing I'm apprehensive about with anybody is that we make sure we know that we're going to get all the data we need when we need it at the beginning, and we want to go down that road. We don't want to feel that there's something more they're holding on to that they're not providing to us, you know, in the process. We want to make sure they know that we want to know everything and keep us informed at the very get-go. I just thought Abacus didn't give me that feeling that they were giving us everything. You know, it was like he was coming to the next meeting and saying, well, okay, this is the next thing type thing. Give it to us now. Mm-hmm. Did you feel that way?
Yeah, if I may, I was thinking in my own mind, what would be different this time from last time? That is, what additional or what new thing would come to the table with Abacus this time that we didn't come to understand or become aware of last time? And I couldn't come up with, there wasn't a clear answer on that to me. I felt, similar to Ken, that it was difficult to get the process driven forward, and part of it may have been that we weren't demanding enough or clear enough about exactly what it is we wanted. But part of it may be, one of the things I liked about Barton and Hendry is that, from their portfolio at least, they had seen a number of projects through to construction and completion. That is, they not only understood what the RFP was asking for in this particular case, but they had then moved beyond that all the way to actually getting the concrete in the ground and the structure. For Abacus, it seems it was more, site selection, community engagement, and less about actually getting a structure built.
Right. And that's one of the things, like I alluded to before, I'm not sure if that is their style or if it's the fact that we didn't have a site when we worked with them before. So they really couldn't go any further. I'm not sure.
If the architect we pick right now, which is the primary responsibility, is going to do the site assessment and things like that, and community outreach. Mm-hmm. If a site gets approved, can we go out, get a different architect if we want for the building?
This is a limited scope.
Yeah, this is a limited scope, right? When we actually go to do final design for the building, it's going to trigger a threshold that we have to go out for
Final grade.
design
This might
selection.
not be the architect.
It might not be,
that's
but
gonna
they would have a leg up because they've been
Sure,
involved with
I
us.
understand that.
Yeah.
That's a great question.
But I'm just thinking, just the fact that they concentrate on site work might not be a bad thing for us at this point. We will have other eyes if we have two other ones to talk to. I don't know. I think there's pros and cons on all of them. As I said, and I'll say it was Catlin that I've had comments from other people. I won't go into the specifics, but we all of us have some comment about the.
Now we have three great people that all have had.
Am I correct in saying that whichever firm it is for this go-round, what we are hoping to have from them is mock-ups or 3D renderings or conceptual designs
That was it.
of perhaps 3 structures, which we will then be able to kind of evaluate and decide, which is the best one to meet our needs.
For one site.
For the site that's eventually chosen.
I thought it was going to be, that we were going to keep the 3 sites. Well, I don't want to go down that route. We want to talk about that later? Or?
I think we can talk about it where we're at.
I thought we might, whatever we're going to do as a group, we're going to try to focus on either 1, 2, or 3 sites. I guess we're down to 3. We may throw out one tonight or something.
Assuming we'll see what the RFP comes out at, but.
The other thing I was curious about, and again, I'm doing it off the top of my head instead of looking at every page here, but I did before. I thought it was BH and A that showed more 2-story buildings than others. It was, and I think they showed more wood frame in the senior centers that they had built. When we did the other work with Abacus, which I think was also good work, because we did get all the way to a concept plan and a program. So that building that they're showing us, the last time we dropped it on the Peroni Park layout,
Right.
I'm pretty sure it was a single-story building, steel
was,
frame.
Yeah.
And, nice modern look to the building. But we might want to settle on a 2-story building or something different than that because of the land we get.
I think the
So-
land's going to dictate that from my perspective, just operationally, my preference is for a one-story building because it's much easier to have staff providing the kind of supervision on when their offices are near what's happening versus when they're a floor away.
In fact, how you
But-
got to the conclusion the last time,
Right.
the program that you had.
But I agree with you. There are a lot of two-story buildings being built because of size constraints or, other factors. I think probably the land will dictate that.
And the other thing too, I'll back up in defense of Abacus. I just dawned on me something else. They were given a task that included the community center aspect of it, which was different than what we're doing now. So in their defense,
Yeah.
they were looking at putting a gym on a building and combining that whole politics of the discussion and whatnot. So it may in fact be that when we get them to concentrate on just the senior center, they may respond better, we may have a better communication than we did before.
And
There was inaccuracies because of the gym potential, I think.
And that's kind of what I was speaking to with the phase of the project, because the early work that Abacus did back in 2019 and 2020 was
the
senior
senior
center
center, right.
only focused, and that's where that concept plan that's in the feasibility study came
Right.
from.
Right.
And then it was in that second part that they were assisting us with, potential.
Yeah, I thought the development from when we started through the feasibility study went really well with Abacus.
Okay.
But then after that, we kind of went
So
into
that's what I'm saying.
210 West
Could
Main,
have been
whatever the
our
address
fault that we
was.
threw all the other
Fell
stuff
apart
in
and we
there.
sort of had to regroup.
Yeah. So, I mean, I will say, from a gerontology, Council on Aging perspective, Catlin is the firm that's at the Massachusetts Councils on Aging, our state association meeting. They're the ones giving presentations at those conferences about senior center design and understanding the gerontological concepts that go into the mission of a senior center. And those are always very well attended. But like Ken said, I think all three of these that are in our top three are qualified to do the work. So do we have an agreement on who the top three are, or are
I
there,
don't think we do.
you don't? No, okay, no, that's fine, that's what I was just wanting to.
So I will say, from my perspective, I thought there was a clear delineation between Catlin, BHNA, and Abacus in terms of their presentations and their experience level to the other three. Like, I actually do think that the top three is very clear.
Okay.
Maybe we
agree.
could go around the table and let everyone have a chance to do give input on that, just for the sake of, sorry, Ellen, I just
I
interrupted you.
agree. I thought Abacus was a little bit lower, but I mean, they gave like a 3-page report, whereas other people were putting 36, 37 pages. So of course, it's going to look much more. I think they were kind of relying on the fact that, me, I've worked there, I've done the job and all of that. But a couple of them I thought were totally unqualified. And
Just a point of order for that, I think the RFP requested no more than 3 pages, right? So
One
some
of the few people
put-
that actually followed the RFP.
Right.
It was only 3 pages because the RFP specifically said no more than 3 pages.
yeah, well, they took a part that they called the
The,
proposal.
Yeah, I
Then
think
they
then they
added
threw all the others.
on, pictures and
Right.
prices and everything. So, is that fair?
I think
is
they
it-
got a little confused, it could have been something on my end, because it says number 2 bullet, proposals shall not be more than 3 pages. Then in the 3rd bullet, we ask for quals and projects, a 4th bullet references, so they kind of tacked those on as attachments.
Yeah.
I had no issue with the way they came.
Yeah, I didn't,
I mean, it gave you more information, but I still felt Abacus had a strong, made a strong case.
Okay.
I had no problem. The top 3 that you've got there are the top 3 that I had picked going through.
Okay.
yeah, I have no issue, I am in agreement with the 3.
Yeah, I'd go with the 3.
Okay.
I agree with the top two. I think that Bergman and Henry and Catlin clearly are the two that provided the most significant information and have the most expansive senior center experience. For Abacus, it's simply not clear to me that they're going to give to us something beyond which they didn't the first time, or that we kind of, and again, why that happened, or things got lost in the switches. I think that another firm, a new firm, might give us some new eyes, some fresh ideas, a kind of a new perspective on things that we hadn't thought of yet, or they may simply have some kind of, out-of-the-box ideas that might be helpful for us to listen to, so.
So did you have a choice of those three that you wanted?
Yeah, that Mogul and Stefano was the third, was my third choice, and Abacus was my fourth, so.
Okay.
Well, if I can backtrack, we have an option. We could interview 4. We don't have to only interview 3.
Okay.
I mean, as a group, we could decide how many we're going to interview.
I still am disturbed that BHNA didn't address, the RFP. And it speaks to, a lack of rigor and maybe laziness.
Okay. Who would you want to move into
I
the top 3?
I don't really have too many other opinions.
Okay. All right, so then I guess that.
No, sorry. What'd you say at the end?
I don't have other opinions. I mean,
For a replacement.
For a replacement, like if she,
Oh, you just, okay. I get it.
so then I guess that's the question is, does the group want to interview 3 or do they want to interview more than 3? So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6 folks who were fine with the top 3 as they scored. But like Ken said, there's no mandate that we only interview 3. So what does the group want to do?
Well, having been in the minority on time or two, I would not want to necessarily have caused my singular vote to require more interviews than the rest of the group feel would be necessary. I mean, I think that having the, and again, it comes down to, as many of us have, your personal experience with things, and it's just not clear to me that Abacus will add more than has already been added, through this part of the process. So, but, if we wanted to vote and I came out wrong on that, then I'm comfortable with that.
I mean, I did not have high ratings at all for whatever it is, Miguel Destano. My higher one was the GNAP,
Oh, wow.
whatever it is, but they didn't have. So it's hard to say, but I hate to do 4
Yeah.
because they take a lot of time if you're going to do a
Okay.
decent job.
I think if Miguel was like your clear number 1, I think maybe there would be a valid argument there. Because they were a close 3-4 with Abacus and it was just one member, I tend to think we should probably go with the overwhelming top 3 personally. Just my opinion.
Is everyone all right with that?
I want to go back to Carolyn for
Yep.
a second on her concern, because I missed whatever she found. So you basically found that they didn't address the RFP because they didn't concentrate on the site selection
Right.
portion of it. I think that's what you said.
Right.
And the way I looked at that was differently than you, because when I got to the page of attachment A, when they listed the concerns of the site, that's what I took to be the site portion, even though it wasn't delineated in the language. When I looked at that, that's what I talked about, 15 minutes ago, was the fact that they listed the pieces that typically would go into the site, or the design of the building, or the startup, or whatever you want to call it. But
They do talk a little bit about site at the bottom paragraph of the program approach.
it's not that easy to figure
Yeah,
out.
at this point, after the program, we can review potential sites, develop criteria for evaluating sites, and test fit working plans into this criteria. Can assist with selecting sites, meeting requirements.
So they kind of hit it in the
Like a quick
program
hit.
approach rather than
Yeah.
talking about it clearly,
Yeah.
which makes it hard to find.
Yeah,
I
at
mean-
times it did feel like apples and oranges on some of these.
Yeah, the way they, well, some of them use the term, which we were looking for, concept. Some of them use the term, what's the other term that they use?
Schematic.
Schematics. But I thought, I wanted to actually go from concept to schematics. That's the kind of the sequence, get deeper into.
That was in Catlin's, was pretty clear.
Yeah, there was a step
Yeah.
there. I think, if everyone agrees on the three, we'll go with the three. I just want to make
Yeah.
sure Carolyn is satisfied with we can use,
Yeah, sure.
okay, with the three.
Okay.
Well, we
So,
should make sure we have a question that addresses the idea that they are prepared to do site work, I think, because it's obviously critical.
Yeah, well, Abacus is going to understand that. Catlin bid the last time. Actually, when we did an RFP for a limited scope before.
Yeah,
It's gotta be somewhere. In,
that was for a previous site, Peroni Park. That was
Exactly,
when we were
right.
going to do the building work. And then obviously that dissolved, but yeah.
but that was,
And they were
we
helping
told them what the site was
Yeah.
the last time.
Right.
So can I ask one clarifying question about that? Obviously, I wasn't involved. Did Abacus ever inform the board of the Article 97 concerns? Or was that learned about through people's Facebook posts? Because
No, it wasn't learned about the Facebook.
just from an outside perspective, that's how it looked from.
That was definitely not from Facebook posts.
But Abacus never, because that was one concern I do have, that, we're relying on them to kind of do this site work homework, that I would anticipate that whoever's hired to be kind of our site selection professional,
Yeah.
they should be informing us
They don't have to do that anymore.
about those things.
We got that covered.
Yeah, there was, for some reason,
There was,
an Article 97
I don't even want to go
issue
down that
we're
route,
not
of how
aware
many
of.
people were involved in that.
Yeah.
Could have known about it, or should have known about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Might
to
have been
your
more
point,
thorough in the
We
investigation.
need to make sure we can trust that they're going to flag these concerns before they become a public
Well,
issue.
I mean, I
Can't blame them for that.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think what I'm hoping to get from the architectural firm is a 2 or 3 attractive options for a building that will meet the needs of the seniors for the next 50 years and works well on the land that is allotted for it. I think it is incumbent on us, on the town administration more generally, that if there are specific legal issues, political issues that might arise as a result of whatever, the building, the site, the abutters or something, that is something that we must kind of take responsibility for, understand, and then, move forward or not, depending on the, I mean, I want a good architect. I think the town needs to find the legal judgments as so.
I'm in agreement with the whole concept of we're going to need to get, legal advice along the way from the town. We've already done a lot of work on the land on ourselves as well, but I think we might not be on the same page. I'm not sure that we're trying to develop 3 building styles. I was kind of thinking that we were going to develop one building style after we get done and then land that building on a piece of land. I think it might, that's just me. You and I might not agree on it. We can come to some discussion about it, but it may be very difficult to go to a town meeting or anything else with 3 choices. It just,
were you meaning at town meeting, or were you meaning for our own internal purposes? Would a 10 to 15,000 square foot building fit on this piece of land?
Right, in that
And then we make a recommendation.
In that if we as a committee kind of want to get more input from the community more broadly and hold a series of forums that's saying, we can put the building here and this is what it will look like and this is what it will contain, or we might be able to put the building here, but before town meeting, that is, and again, I think that this is something the committee, because we wrestled with this in the last go-around.
Yeah.
How many choices do you, that is, I don't think that we can effectively accomplish what we're trying to accomplish by giving an infinite number of choices to the public.
No.
No, there's no way. No.
So there has to be a finite number of choices, 3, let's say, 2.
Let's say,
One of that they can, do you feel good about this or not good about this or what have you?
I think, excuse me, I think Dennis has just hit on a question for the interviews. That's the type of question we probably want to ask the architects. Do you think that when we do this process, in your experience, that we would end up working with you to get to a conclusion of one building, or do you think we're better off as a town or group to go with a concept of 2 buildings or 3 buildings on a piece of land? And we can ask them that, and they'll tell us from their professional experience how that shakes out, and what we feel comfortable about.
And I think that ties in with the community involvement phase of this. And I was involved early on when I was working at the senior center and participating in programs. And I think it was Abacus that had that first community meeting, which was extremely successful. We got a huge turnout, people. Now, I can't remember if it was that we ran, what happened, but the ball did get dropped, and all that information that they were gathering at that meeting and then online, etc. I never saw anything published from that.
No,
and then we got into...
It was in the feasibility
Definitely
study.
published.
Yeah, well, I'm talking about, I'm not sure when that came out, but, and then we got into COVID and everything else. But there was that feeling of everybody who had participated, well, what happened? What happened? What happened? What happened? But the more choices you give people, the more, I can see maybe too, but things can turn into nightmares. But I think that is a component of getting the community involved and
Absolutely.
helping to make the choice ultimately.
Absolutely, and I think there can be different varying levels of choice at different parts of the process, for sure. Sorry, Dave, you wanted to...
My understanding was that our job was to come to town meeting with, here's the building, here's the site, this is what we want to do. And prior to that, all of that, we, as the town's representative, are going to make the decision. This is the site that we want to use, this is the building that we want to use, and then we're going to bring it to town meeting and say, here's our finished product. Do you agree with us, or do you want us to start again? I thought that was my understanding, was that's what we were here for, was to eliminate all the other nonsense and say, here you go, we found the site, we found the building, this is what we'd like it to look like. Here, we want you to approve this now.
I think that's the end. I think that's the end point you get to. I think you definitely would have a layer before that where when we have maybe, just to make up an example, maybe there's a smaller 2-story building that can fit on Brook Street because that's a more constrained site versus a larger, more expansive building at 0 McPherson with walking trails or whatever. I don't know this, I'm just tossing out examples. And then you can do some initial public feedback and get some input on those things. And then then the committee takes that feedback plus our own and then takes a single design. That's how I had envisioned it.
50-50.
What?
You're just going to end up at 50-50. You won't get a conclusion.
Yeah, I mean,
I'll go partway down the road with Dave, because that's kind of what I was thinking on my own, but prior to that would obviously have these public forums. Now, I want to make an interesting comment that you can see there is nobody here tonight.
Right.
Okay. The Zoom is down, but we have, representatives.
What is that?
Professionals here. We have our professionals here tonight by invitation,
Right.
and they were kind enough to come. But the public is not here tonight. You know what I meant.
Correct. I know. I don't.
And if you recall, the first time we met, there was more engagement. They've already lost interest. We're the ones now that are going to be doing the work. And we're going to have to continue to do the work. And we have enough, there's really a really good representation here. So, yeah, I think
And
Gonna have to take those steps to get there.
To your earlier point, I think that and today's point, I think we go to, or would like to go to town meeting with because I think finances will require it, that we go to town
Yeah,
meeting
that's
with
right.
a choice.
Budget.
That it has, but between, I mean, there may be, you can get the, A, B, C, and the cost, I mean, we haven't even begun to discuss relative costs.
Right.
And it may be that the town, we will have to assess, you can have this kind of building, it'll cost you X. You can have this kind of building, which is more amenable to future expansion, will have greater amenities, may have larger spaces or what have you, nicer accoutrements on the inside, and that's gonna cost you more. And how does the town feel about those budgetary issues as they evolve?
Yeah, and to your point, right now, like I said, we're hopefully nearing the finish line for two separate buildings in Billerica. One is 23,000 square feet, one is 14,000 square feet. One is 20.2 million, the other one's 20.7 million, even though the other one's twice the size, because it's just
Furnishings and everything.
finished a lot differently, and it's one is a COA and one is a rec. So the needs are just drastically different. What's inside is drastically different. So there is a lot of fine tuning that will happen as we navigate this path. But I think getting the firm on board is step one, obviously, and then I think the public input that has to happen before we even think about looking at building designs is getting public input about what exactly do they want in the building, what amenities are we trying to accomplish, what programming needs are there. I think that's really where we need to focus before we talk about conceptual designs and schematic designs, because until we have that feedback of what this building should accommodate, it's kind of a moot point and putting the cart before the horse a little bit, I think.
Agreed. All right, so I think that's a good point. Are we in agreement that we will interview the numerical top three, just to put that one
Yes.
decision? Okay, I don't know if we need a motion. Do we need a motion for that?
I would recommend it
Okay.
just for the record.
All right, can I get a motion to,
I'll make a motion that we interview the top three numerical firms as they're outlisted on the chart.
great, can I get a second?
And just for the record, if we could, you
Oh,
may
there,
want to
Catlin,
disclose.
BH&A, and Abacus.
Who seconded that?
BH&A.
The motion. Did
Oh,
someone-
I'm sorry,
Dennis.
Dennis. Oh, no,
Oh, sorry.
I think it was Carolyn.
sorry.
The Ds, all the Ds are doing it.
All right, all in favor? Aye. Chair says aye. All right, wonderful. So actually, as a point of order to the town manager, we actually probably should have amended the agenda when we first started, because I didn't have any an item for an update on
We didn't have any discussion on the vote before the vote.
The RFP.
On discussion of the architects.
Of the motion.
Oh, okay, so it was moved
Typically-
and seconded. Is there any further discussion?
Yeah, is there any further?
No.
Yes.
Yes. Oh,
There always is, when I'm in the room.
all right.
I'm a little bit concerned now professionally, who is going to notify the folks that they are going to get an interview, and who's going to notify the folks that we kindly appreciate their effort, but they have not made the top group.
I'm gonna suggest that Dan do that since he issued the RFP.
Yeah, I'm fine. I can reach out to them and be the main point of contact for the committee.
Okay, thank you.
As we started, yeah.
That was the only discussion I had.
Okay, so then, do we have to revote, or does that?
No.
Stand? Okay, all right, okay. So then, I realized as we're talking, I actually didn't have on the agenda the updates on the three sites that we had narrowed it to last time. There were a couple of homework items. So can
Would
you
you
make
like-
a motion to amend the agenda to create a new item number 5, that is site updates?
I move that we modify the agenda to add another element, number 5,
Can you legally do that?
that, or whatever.
Discussion of the three
Yeah.
Can you
previous.
legally do that because you haven't notified the public of the
You
agenda?
can amend the agenda at the beginning of the meeting, right?
Yeah, so normally you would at the beginning of the meeting.
Yeah.
That being said, if they're just going to be updates, there's not going to be any action
Right.
based on it, I
right.
think you'd be okay.
As long as you don't take a vote.
As long as there's no votes at action.
Yeah,
Right. No, I don't anticipate a vote, yeah.
okay. So, Mr. Town Manager, do you have any?
So the motion
Oh, I'm sorry.
made Carolyn and then seconded.
Second.
Okay, Ellen. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair says aye. Okay, great, motion passes. Thank you, sorry, I should have suggested that from the beginning. So, Mr. Town Manager, do you have updates for us?
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I could have done it under public input, I suppose,
Oh,
as a
I
member
guess
of the
that's true.
public. But just 2 quick updates on the homework assignments I had from last time, and unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, there's no action items just yet. So the first was having to do with the site, the DPW site down by the brush dump on McPherson Road. Bishop, right. So we have formally, since the committee last met, formally reached out to Mass Development regarding the following. One is further information and discussion about verification of the ownership of the road, the whole Bishop McPherson piece. The second was about the process and logistics involved in potentially moving the gate, as discussed, of the gate just by the cemetery, moving that over. And then the third piece, which Dan provided me with from here, was that triangular piece, if you'll recall, this strange triangular piece that's under Mass Development of land next to that. What further information from them on that site, but also specifically, which I think would be of value for this committee, is the exact process, what would be involved on that site. That's the good news. The bad news is we're still waiting to hear back from Mass Development. So we're on them on those points. So I'm hopeful, even before your next meeting, as soon as we have information, I will do a memo to the committee. So it'll be for the record, and you'll have it, in advance or by the next meeting. The second assignment that I had to do with 151 Washington Street's the whole school parcel. And the committee was interested in potentially carving out a parcel of land near the Groton Harvard School Road. And so we're making progress on this one. So I talked to town council to ask what would the process be. So this is what we know. So we know obviously that it's town land that is leased to the regional school district that they're using. So the question becomes now, if we wanted to carve out a piece of the land, it belongs to the town of Ayer, what would that involve? So here's the nothing is, you'll appreciate this, nothing is ever easy because we have to verify this, so just bear with me. The significance that will determine the pathway is how that land was originally conveyed to the town of Ayer. If the land was originally conveyed to the town of Ayer for general municipal purposes, so it was just given to the town, then to carve out that land would involve agreement between the regional school committee and the town and would not require town meeting. So if the land was originally conveyed just as general town purposes, then we could amend the regional agreement, which would require a vote of the school committee that has 3 members from Ayer and 3 from Shirley and from the town, and would not require town meeting.
Do you mean like the select board?
Yeah.
Okay.
If the land was conveyed for,
I'm sorry, just,
So the first thing you said was general town purposes. That was the language that you used.
yes,
I'm sorry, Katie, I didn't understand your question nor his response in terms of the select board.
You said, he said if it was if it was conveyed for general municipal purposes, the piece could be carved out with an agreement between the school committee and the town, but no town meeting would be required. And I said, well, then who do you mean by the town? Do you mean the select board?
Yeah.
And he's, yes.
But just this town, not
Correct.
not the town
Right.
of Shirley.
Yep. So
Okay.
so what we're hoping for, and I'll get to the last piece we'll work on, if that land was conveyed originally, and the question is, there's the hunt, and how it was, and we have to verify that, and that's what town council's doing. We can't just go on a rumor or a hunch. We need, the proof. If that was the case, then, assuming the district would be in agreement between the select board, a vote of the select board and a vote of the school committee could amend the agreement, that piece of land could be conveyed back, could be used for this purpose.
Or other purposes.
Or other purposes. What we need to verify, the concern is now here's the scenario that is the one we want to try to, hope isn't the case. If that land was conveyed to a specific board or committee or for a specific purpose, school purposes, and we don't have confirmation on that yet, then, because it was given for purposes of the school, the agreement has to be amended, but it requires a town meeting vote of both of the towns because it was given for school purposes.
If it was given.
If. The other thing we want to rule out is if. That's the piece that they're actively want to confirm. It most likely, and I want to emphasize pending verification, was hopefully just general municipal purposes. We also want to make sure it wasn't for some reason conveyed, and the devil's always in the detail. If it was conveyed to some conservation commission, we doubt it, or if it was conveyed to some other entity, it would require potentially their approval. We don't, so where town council is on it, and we've got the town clerk involved, we've got the town clerk in Groton, they have to do a thorough, we want to...
Town clerk in Groton?
Just because we know that it's Ayer from 1871, and we just want to rule everything.
Got it.
You see what I'm saying? So we're doing when I say we, town council, it's called a title search. Forgive me, probably many of you are familiar with that. We want to come back to the committee, and again, as soon as we have this, with who owned it, who conveyed it, what was it conveyed for, and then we can fill in the process. We're cautiously optimistic that it was general municipal purposes, which would mean if we were to proceed with that, then it's a matter of the school committee and the Ayer Select Board approving, and we move forward. If not, we feel that it would involve a larger process with town meeting, but we're not there yet. And we want to be, and to conclude, because I know you got other things on my report, you want a definitive answer, we all do it, so we have the exact information. We don't want to rely on, what we think or rumor. We'll have it in black and white and backed up. This is the pathway. So we're almost, I had hoped for tonight but we're almost there on the school piece. And mass development, we'll stay on them, and I hope to have something tangible by your next meeting.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
So that was, I believe that was my homework besides the RFP piece, which we covered, so.
Does anyone have any questions? I do.
Yep, go for it.
Ken likes me.
Tell me how the school, who could write a lease on the land to the school if you hadn't done exactly what you just talked about already before to determine who is in control of that land before a lease could be written on the land? And secondly, in that lease, which I haven't seen, I don't know if any of us have seen, does it actually list the exact parcel, meets and bounds, the whole entire composite of the land in description? Or does it just say a piece of land up on Washington Street or something like that? The lease has to be very specific.
Right.
And before someone signed that lease with two towns involved, everything you said makes sense. But if it was given for the school of Ayer, it maybe could never be used for the school of Shirley in a regional school. So all this talk, research that you've done should have been done before any lease was signed on the property. Should have been cleared for the same reason we're looking at it.
It doesn't mean it was.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean it was. What I'm saying is, maybe the lease isn't any good. We still could have control of the land.
Right, so, no, and I think it's a very.
Kick Shirley out?
Yeah, point. So
Just get more money out of them.
that's, and we've
Just
been.
curious, because
Yeah.
we bring it up now, but it should have been brought up before. To see- So a clear lease could have been signed by the right parties.
Alan, I think, would.
Perhaps to make comment? to,
Yes.
you just,
Sure.
I think it'll provide a little bit of,
Absolutely.
Thank you, Robert, that was awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks, Robert, good work.
That was awesome.
just for the record, Alan Menoyan, Director of Community and Economic Development. I do a lot of historic, just as a regular thing in town, and I've come across, and I can at least share this with you all. The land, which is now the school property, was bequeathed, was given to the town of Ayer in June of 1883 by brothers Alfred and Thomas Page, as in the Page Block, the historic Page Block, and others. So it was their land, and they bequeathed it to the town, and we have this both in the actual original newspaper articles from 1883, as well as in the town annual reports from 1883, 84, and all. It was approximately, it says here, between 30 and 40 acres. They donated it. One thing that I did find that was, and we got to check this legally, that it was bequeathed under the condition that it would be used in perpetuity. And I'm sorry, I should go back. The reason they gave it to the town was for what then was called the town farm or poor farm. That's what it was specifically for those people that were destitute, and every New England town did this. This is what they did because, this is right after, Ayer became a town in 1871, so no longer Groton, so then we have to do this now, our own town. They gave the land up there, and again, they did say in one of the, I think I actually got that from the History of Middlesex County, Volume 2, 1890, they said, I think that it was in perpetuity for a poor farm. Now, poor farms, that all ceased to be a little before World War II, thank goodness. The other key date then for you all is 1956. It was in 1956 that the town select board and town decided we are going to build a new elementary school for the town. And this is the site they determined. It's went in great detail in the newspaper. I have many, many articles describing their process. The main thing is they did do a very detailed survey, plan, and all that. So that exists somewhere. I hope somebody knows going through. The land was owned partially by the Department of Public Works. It was DPW land for the water tower. Yep, and the other part just says that that it was owned, by the town for the poor farm. So those are the main dates. If you key in, on 1956, I think that's where you might find. And I'd even like to go upstairs. We have in the old files, old plans and map. I think it's somewhere, either deep or buried somewhere, at least these plans from 1956, that I think will really.
I have found a few, but why don't you check with me later? I remember them being 1961, but it did show Page Hilltop with, and then.
Right, now understand they built the elementary school first in 1956. Then they went forward in 61 and 62 and built the high school building next to it.
So that might be what I have.
When they did it in 19.
Wow.
I'm pleased to say the architectural firm was a Lowell firm. I think that firm actually still exists, Gilbert and Lowell. I think they may even have old stuff from 1956, believe it or not. So anyway, we'll keep helping in any way we can with this type of historic, original source stuff. And I think we'll put the pieces together. It's always fascinating, right, getting how did that all happen and did, but.
That
That's it.
sounds encouraging.
That's it.
It's at least, thank you for all your research on that. At least helps narrow the focus of where to look for those documents, yeah.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you, Alan.
Madam Chair, and I think it's important to do this work now, because when we have the architectural firm on board, we want them to, we want them to be, well, we want to know if there's a viable solution at that site or not. Whether politically or legally, there may be hurdles that we are incapable of overcoming. So prior to us asking the architectural firm, would you take a look at this? I think we need our ducks in a row on that particular site.
And then just add one point
Please
to
go
that.
back, yeah.
And that's, and Alan's point, that the piece of history that Alan shared, which is making us cautiously optimistic, is when I said how it was originally conveyed from the Page family in 1883. It was for the poor farm, general municipal purposes. It wasn't, granted, there was
Anything
a
to do with
school built later.
Right.
When this process, what we're doing when we do the total title search, they're doing it of that whole parcel, obviously focusing in the area we're interested, but the whole thing. This committee will have the definitive scope of that whole site, and there's a lot that has happened there. There's DPW pieces. So what I'm getting at is you'll have not only the clear pathway, whatever it may be, if you decide to move in that direction, but you'll have additional information that may be of value. So I appreciate the patience on the school
I
piece,
think
but
that's
that
great.
should come together quickly, and we will stay on, I talked with Dan a couple times, we will really stay on mass development about the importance of pathways, definitive pathways, if, I want to stress that for the public, you were to consider that site on McPherson Bishop Road. We need to, these are fundamental issues. What are the pathways and the options, not what we think or what have you, but if we, can we move the gate? What does that involve? What doesn't that involve? That piece of land, could we incorporate that into it? So more to come.
Excellent, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
It's encouraging, it is.
Any more on the site updates before we move forward?
Anybody, we want to go around and review them again, and just keep the three. It's up to, we all agree we're just going to keep those last three that we talked about?
Yeah.
I'm not sure if Dave was involved, that's why.
I was not, but I fully trust, the judgment of the committee.
Okay,
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm comfortable with the three.
Me too.
yeah.
All right. So then that brings us to public input, but seeing as there's no public here,
Before we finish the review of the architects, don't we have to set up appointments before you?
well, that's what I was, for our next meeting, that's what I was gonna,
okay.
yeah. So, I'm out of the office a few days in March, so just speaking for myself, and if the rest of the committee is available to meet, that's perfectly fine, but I'm available on the 12th through the 15th that week, and then I'm available the last week of the month. So I think the next step would be to have Dan reach out and let the three that we want to interview know, and then schedule the interviews either, preferably one of those two times in March. And then hopefully by that point, the committee authorized the issuing of the RFP, so we might have some even preliminary responses, if there are any responses to it. And then we might have more updates as well on the two sites that the town manager's
So
office.
you said the 12th through the 15th,
The 12th through the 15th.
and what were the other dates?
Calendar here. That last week, so sorry, let me.
So the 12th through or the 12th and?
The 12th through the 15th. So, yeah, Tuesday through Friday of that week, or the entire week of the 25th.
So for the week of the 12th is the only day that I would do that. I would be able to do that week. I personally see benefit in doing the last week in March, giving these firms the courtesy of some advance notice to schedule these meetings. The 12th through the 15th is 2 weeks or less
Right.
notice. And then also, if we meet the last week of March, it's very likely that we'll have some RFPs to, look at.
Yeah, I mean, the 12th, that's a busy week for me for family reasons, so
Okay.
I think.
So the week of the 25th, we don't have Cindy here to advise on the meetings. That's a 4th. Or they do it,
I've got access to it,
Oh.
so I can.
okay.
Yeah.
Is there, I mean, we've been doing Thursdays.
Well, I'm sorry, Mary, how would the interviews work? Do you
How long
invite
do
them
we
all in?
give to each
Do you
person?
invite them all in at the same time, 1, 2, 3, or do you do it 3 separate times, or do you, how do you?
Usually do them separate, one in, the others hang out in the,
Oh, wow.
or they can sit
Yeah,
down
either
here, I
one
guess,
at
if
the
they
same
want it.
No, I meant
It would be the same night.
Same
the
night.
same night we do.
Yeah, same night, yeah.
The town clerk entertains the ones that wait.
Yeah,
Should we have a meeting prior and come up with a list of questions that we want to ask
We have to.
them first? Because we can't just walk in and go, what
Yeah.
questions does anybody, we should have a list of
So
specific
I think
questions that
that-
we asked
that-
all 3 firms.
Or can we
Yeah.
collect some now?
Yeah, so if there are particular, how about if there are particular questions that you would like to ask, could we submit them to Dan? And then he can compile a list of questions, and then, does that seem to make sense? That way we would have a uniform list of questions?
But we're not going to have a chance to discuss that until right before the first interview?
Well, why don't we just give us like, to the 15th of the month to get the questions to Dan or you, the next couple of weeks. Then between that time and the end of the month, we can isolate the questions to the ones we want to ask with input from the town manager, because there may be specific questions we need to use, because we're municipal. I'm not sure if Dan,
Right.
do we have to have any special requirements for municipal questions? I don't know.
Standardized.
You can ask
Yeah,
them whatever we want.
no, that's,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
Madam Chair, just quick, my 2 cents, just a suggestion. So I think to break all the elements down, you want to pick a date and do them all the same night. So the key thing, to the extent possible, is that each one is treated relatively the same. That doesn't mean there isn't going to be some variation. So say you're going to meet with each one, I'm just going to say an hour, each. So, and then what we generally do is we have a series of questions which could be generated from this group in advance. And many of you have been involved with this before. Some haven't, so forgive me. But usually the firm comes in, you give them a brief opportunity to usually just do a brief introduction. Then you get into your questions, and that's the meat of it. And then usually towards the end, I don't know, maybe you do it a little different, you give them sort of like a little closing opportunity.
Yep.
and wrap it up there. So again, it depends of the committee's, timeline. I mean, you could do the questions, at least the majority of the questions in advance, submit them to Dan or what have you. But I think the key is to be consistent as much as possible with each
Right.
firm.
Yeah, so I think if everyone submitted the questions that was of importance to tease out all the different viewpoints that we've seen tonight to Dan, then some of them may be the same. We could
Right.
try and narrow it down to, a manageable number of questions that get at that essence, and then just sort of assign each person to ask one of those
Yeah,
questions.
we'll kind of just go around.
Can you send the questions to the firms in advance and say, these are the questions we want you to answer while you're here?
I think you want to
Or is
surprise
that
them.
too much, or is
Yeah,
that too
you
much
want to see how they
advanced?
do when you ask them
Yeah.
the question.
Yeah.
How
Put the look on
long,
their
is it an
faces.
hour for each one, or
It's a lot.
45
It's a
minutes,
lot.
or what?
An hour's a long time.
Yeah, well,
I
hour's
was
a
going to say
long
like
time.
35, 40 minutes at
Yeah.
the most.
Okay,
Yeah, 'cause
so
we're gonna run out of
would
So
things
when
to
we write an
say.
agenda.
would it probably be around 4 questions, or 4 or 5 questions?
No, probably more
Sometimes
than
you ask a
that,
question,
yeah.
it leads to another question right off the spot.
Yeah.
Is there
Yeah.
typically just one representative from the firm, or do they bring?
No, usually
It's up to
there's,
them.
usually there's multiple, yeah, it's up to them,
Okay.
yeah.
It'll be a team.
Yeah.
I'm sure it'll be
But I
a
think
team.
we'd probably end up with like
Sometimes they
10
bring stuff,
questions or
too.
something, maybe
Okay.
less, yeah.
Does everybody know who Bernie Madoff was?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
He always went in alone. Amazing. convince people all by
Probably
himself.
have done away with it.
Yeah. Well,
He
that's up
didn't
there.
want anybody stealing his thunder.
Like a Ponzi
Madam
scheme.
Chair, I'm
Yes.
sorry, just through you to Dan, real quick, just one other question, because I'm drawing a blank on this. What's unique about this is they could potentially, because it's public, which it has to be, as the chair mentioned, she's correct.
Oh, that's
In your experience, how do you handle the public piece?
Yeah.
Have you ever ran into that? Because I'm trying to think, meaning, if somebody, I mean, you have to go through the chair, wants to ask
Oh,
a question
public.
from the public. Should I check with council on
Yeah, I
that?
think, I'm not sure. Yeah, we have to,
I don't think.
because I know you want it to be
You don't
standard.
have to
and
do
I-
that. No.
Yeah,
We
I,
never did in Billerica.
Yeah.
to me, it seems like public, I mean, and I'm just,
Yeah.
my opinion, public input would be for the board at the end of the interview process, not,
Yeah.
Yeah,
not directly to the
Yeah.
candidates.
sounds right.
Yeah.
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 I think it would be unfair to the interviewee to have to answer questions from the public.
No, I
which
agree. I
could
just
be-
wanted to bring it up
Yeah, yeah.
because-
Because
No,
you'd
it's
have
good.
to have the same question to all of them.
Right.
If they added a
Valid.
question,
Yeah.
then the other
Standard,
candidates would also
equitable,
need
yeah.
the same
And
question.
I could set
I think-
that expectation at the beginning of the
Last point, I
meeting.
think to Dan's point, for that night, there'd be a specific agenda just for those interviews.
That's
That
it.
wouldn't
It's a
include
one agenda
the
meeting.
public piece.
Yeah.
It's a what?
That'd be
One
one
item.
agenda meeting.
But to Ellen's point, are you saying that the questions we ask each of the firms have to be identical?
Yes,
Oh,
that's
I-
my understanding.
I don't-
I mean, I have a problem with that, actually, because, all firms are different. What we saw as strong points of some firms or weak points of others. And so, I think that the questions need to be tailored to what we saw in their application.
I think if you ask all firms the same questions, whether it's their strong point or their weak point, everybody gets the same 10 questions. And then if you ask question one and then they spin like this, then you can ask follow-up questions
That's what I thought.
That's what I was thinking.
off of it.
There
So
might
that
be-
everybody, they can't come back and say, well, you tailored the questions so this firm would win.
Right, so that's the idea,
think you
that they're
have-
Right.
supposed to be fairly
Well,
standardized, but
but-
it doesn't mean, I think you could have a core set of 5 to 7 questions. It doesn't mean that there won't be follow-ups and
Yeah.
questions that are specific, that flow out of that conversation. I think you do have to have a
Alan used a good term, baseline, but
Baseline.
but to Carolyn's point though, too, it's not, of course, there's gonna be some different aspects to each one.
I think I'm liking what I hear from Carolyn, but the baseline would be questions we ask every firm. But then we would go into their proposal potentially and say, okay, now in your proposal showed us this, could you
Yeah.
elaborate on that a little further? Or something like that, maybe, so at least the other thing that, we haven't talked about here, and I did note it on my stuff, was we haven't talked about the fees. This process, are we gonna select somebody regardless of what their hourly rate is, and because we feel they're the best candidate? Or are we gonna think about the fee potentially as part of the decision?
I would just, I think that would be the future discussion after the interviews.
Okay.
And we factor that in.
Try to
at that
find the
time.
most qualified person first.
Yeah.
Yep, okay.
But I think if you have a concern about a particular firm, such as BH and whatever, and their site work, then one of the questions should be specific to site work. And one of the follow-up questions you can ask can be, I noticed on your proposal that you didn't talk a lot about that. Are you sure you have the capacity to do that, or something like that? So what we need to make sure when we tell Dan is, I want to make sure there's a question about this. I want to make sure there's a question about community involvement, and, what's your timeline, what's your experience, and different things, or, whatever.
Yeah.
That seems reasonable.
That's good.
All right, good. So everyone will submit their questions to Dan by, let's see, So we're agreeing on a meeting the week of the 25th. Dan, when would you like those questions submitted?
Probably
The first?
The 25th. Yeah.
The night before?
How about the 15th? Would that work?
That's what I was
It's
guessing.
like 2 weeks.
I was guessing.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, by the 15th?
15th, yeah, a couple weeks.
Beware the
And then
Ides
I
of
can
March. huh?
compile it all and make sure none are the same and get them back out to the group.
Great.
Yeah.
And then in terms of meeting with the architects the week of the 25th, what evening works best for everyone?
Well, just to, that's Holy Week, just to make everybody aware, so.
Oh, okay,
Good
yeah.
Friday is Friday, Saturday is.
Holy Thursday is Thursday.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
So the good news is that week as of right now, and checking the town calendar, is relatively open. There's one exception. On Wednesday, the 27th, at 6 PM is the second budget forum. It's a shameless pitch. Please come. So that's
Yes, okay.
at 6 o'clock on Wednesday, this room will be used, but other than that, it's wide open right now.
Okay.
It really starts on Thursday, right? Holy
Right.
Thursday is
You
right.
can't go Thursday or Friday.
Okay. What about Tuesday, the 26th?
Sounds good. Oh, it's.
Is that that's
Oh,
not
I
a select board?
can't, we're having a
Planning board
fundraising
meeting
event
then.
for this.
Excuse
for
me?
the Friends
Planning
of-
board. Am I in the
That's
wrong
planning
one?
board, yeah.
Friends of,
Second Thursday,
the
second Tuesday.
library. It's a dinner thing at Tiny's. You can, starts at 5:30. I mean, I could go, but we're hoping that people will come to that, but, I mean, you can go ahead and I'll just do what I have to do.
There's usually never a meeting on Monday.
Yeah.
What?
There's usually never a
It's
meeting
not.
on Monday. Monday's always available.
Board of Health? I'm
Um,
looking at the wrong thing.
Never-
Disabilities Commissions, we meet on Monday,
25th.
the third Monday of the month.
Third Monday.
Okay, so the third Monday, so, oh, disabilities is third Monday?
Disabilities,
Yeah, the 25th is
The
open.
25th is open. Does that work for everyone, the 25th?
Yeah.
I believe so.
Okay, all
Yeah.
right, wonderful.
Meet the architects on
So
the
the next,
25th.
so if we did essentially 45 minutes, if we did 6 o'clock, that'd be 6 to 6:45, and then 6:45 to 7:15, and 7:15 to 8. So I mean, that would be, right, to do,
7:30,
yeah,
8:15.
It would be, yeah.
yeah, so that's,
6:15.
No, that's,
is that 8:15, yeah, is that,
it seems tight, but, I mean, I haven't gone through this process
So
before.
we start at 5?
no, I'm saying is if we started at 6, that would take us past 8.
Yeah,
Right.
we start at 5:30?
That's up to,
Dave.
that's up to the board committee.
I can try, but certainly, start whenever and I can hop in. I would recommend if we do 5:30, let's try to do Abacus first because I'm the most familiar with them,
Okay.
if that's possible.
Okay.
And then we have a discussion following to decide, or or do we wait?
That would be the prerogative of the committee. In other words, you could conclude the interviews and you, for the evening, and then regroup. You could have some discussion, and then I think you're gonna need, and Dan, you correct me if I'm wrong, the second piece, after you've done the evaluations, you'll have done the reviews, the committee will then wanna talk about the issue of the fee, right, Dan? So,
Right, so
yeah.
I think what you said, probably have a limited discussion afterwards and then a follow-up meeting to finally decide.
Yeah.
Are we gonna have to have one of those rating lists?
No,
No, okay.
no. I mean, I would bring what we have so far, but
But in the meantime, are you gonna do the references? Or are you gonna wait until we interview?
we didn't talk about that. I mean, we could do that. I could do that. I think that's a good idea. Have one person call
I think it's something we
up.
should have,
Yeah,
because if there's a big red flag, we'd wanna ask a question about it, right?
yeah.
And if we wanted to tour some of their previous work, just kind of, I don't know, stop by whatever town they built a senior center in and that kind of thing, we can do that individually.
Yeah, I've done 2 of them.
Yeah, we actually did that. We did a tour of some of BH&A's facilities actually, when we were working with them as a group. Like, we just took a field trip.
But if the
What
group
ended
couldn't
up
make
happening?
it,
It didn't change anything.
It actually accelerated the exit, if I'm going to be honest with you.
Okay.
So you want me to, me to take the charge of reference checks?
Yeah, if you don't mind, that would
Sure.
be
Yeah, I'll do that, and I can report back.
Getting a lot of support here from DPW.
Clerical worker.
Yeah, right.
that's what I call it, Public Works.
And would you like there to be more than one person? It doesn't have to fall just on Dan. Ken, would you
Yeah.
like to do that together? I mean,
Carol,
I'm not
I think
trying to
you could
exclude
for-
anybody from that.
I think it's a really good
What do you
idea
want
to have
somebody
Dan
to
do it
sit
because he
in
sent
when
the
you do it?
RFPs out.
If you'd like to, yeah, are we,
I wouldn't mind doing that.
Okay.
okay. Yeah, I'll bring you in, Ellen.
7:30 PM.
Ah. Why'd she say that?
Cool.
All right. Okay. So I think we've got our next meeting settled. Any other?
I'm sorry, it's March 25th?
March 25th at 5:30 and,
Is that around 5:30? Okay.
I'm sorry, yes, I thought we
Yeah,
had said that.
and I'll try to schedule Abacus first.
Yeah, if possible.
Yeah,
Yeah, that'd be great.
and, yeah.
And then are we gonna, I presume we expect them to be here versus virtually?
Yeah, that's what I would ask,
Okay.
yeah.
All right.
Now, one thing we'll need to be prepared for is typically we give the applicant an opportunity to ask the committee questions, I believe, as well. So there's a potential that we could get questions, or you can get questions to chairman, and
Sure.
they have to
No, I
respond
think that's
Oh,
accordingly.
definitely.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So we get a 35-minute interview, 10 minutes of them asking us questions, and get out. Next.
If they don't have any questions for us, then we'll see if they're the one or not.
Okay. Any other items for discussion before we adjourn?
Well, not for, at some point on the agenda for future meeting, I think maybe it was Dave or Ellen, in terms of communicating to the broader community and how we're going to kind of handle, publicity or public forums, or how to kind of structure that. I know that when we first met, the concern around Facebook postings, or, not having that, or how we disseminate accurate, the battle between disseminating accurate information and fighting back against less than accurate information, if that's something we're going to want to do, just how that's going to be structured going forward.
We talked about publishing
we
a
have David
summary of each
on our
meeting.
team.
Are we doing that?
We have Dave on our
Yes.
team, takes
Yeah.
care of that stuff.
Yeah, so we are. Okay.
Is he?
He's good.
Is it already going on?
No, I'm just teasing.
No, I'm just,
I thought you
I
said
think
your job was over.
there's a secret Facebook group and a super secret Facebook group that is.
No, there's none of that, none of that. Okay, so what I hear being said is that our next meeting on the 25th will be a single item for the architect interviews. We'll do a limited discussion afterwards to queue up a meeting fairly quickly after that, where we can vote to choose an architect, and then at that point, we may also add items like any site updates that are available for that homework, private land RFP updates, and some preliminary discussion of publicity plans after that.
Yeah.
Does that seem reasonable?
So the priority would be the architects, but we still would have the other items on the agenda later on,
Yes.
if we can get to them.
Yeah, if you can get to them, and we could always choose to
That's a
table
good
them
idea,
depending
yeah.
on how long that discussion goes, so. All right, great. Sounds like a good plan. All right, do I have a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
All right, seconded?
Second?
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Have a
we
good
are-
trip.
Thank you. We are adjourned at 7:40.